It is the middle of August here in Northwest Arkansas, and it has been really hot, around 95 to 100 every day. It's been super humid, and we just got a really big rainstorm last night. So the garden has taken a beating lately, but I wanted to show you a few things going on that are looking really nice and that can kind of withstand the late summer heat here in our area. At this point in the season, my hydrangeas have changed from creamy white to green, and you can see that they're starting to get a bit sunburned. Here in our area, I do not put these in full sun. These get only morning sun. This is the east side of our house, so they get morning sun but no afternoon sun. They have complete shade from our house, and they're still burning. So if you live in the south where it's hot and humid like me, you might want to protect your limelight hydrangeas, even if it says that they can take full sun. And I find that if you harvest the blooms, if you're harvesting them for cutting, harvest them once they have just started to turn green and before they burn, so that you can get some good blooms. Also, if you kind of dig around underneath, the lower blooms and blooms toward the back of the bush have less damage on them. From the road and from far away, these still look lovely, so I'm not upset about the burning on them, but if you were using them for cutting, you would want to make sure that you used blooms that were still preserved. So you can see these later blooms that are still creamy white, they'll fade to green, and they don't have any sun damage on them, whereas the blooms in front of them are older and have some damage. So that's something to keep in mind. This is not an encouragement to not grow limelight hydrangeas, but just to make sure that you only give them morning sun, especially if you're in the hot south. At this point in the season, all of my yellowy cream blooming hostas are blooming all of a sudden, and some of my purple ones too, you can see in the back. This guy even has a bumblebee just hiding within its bloom. One thing that is looking really pretty and full of blooms this time of year is my autumn clematis. This actually is invasive in our area, and when it came up I wasn't sure what it was. I went ahead and let it go to bloom so I could figure out what this plant was, but now that I know that it's autumn clematis, I'm going to go ahead and move it. I think my goal is to move it into my chicken run so that my hens can keep it in check, make sure it doesn't spread, because again, it is invasive, but this will also give them some shade as it climbs fairly vigorously. At this point in the season, I have cut back my yarrow multiple times, and I've used it quite a bit for arrangements, and it's still looking nice and pushing fresh growth. And my daylilies are just starting to rebloom as well. You can see here some of my yellow daylilies are just coming back into bloom. And I find that my lamb's ear performs the exact same whether we are in early spring or hot summer. It looks the same. So that's a good one if you struggle with things scorching in the heat. Lamb's ear is pretty consistent. My salvia has been cut back and it is reblooming. And my China asters are just starting to bloom. There was a few buds and a few blooms, just like one or two here or there earlier in the season, but now that we're heading into fall and shorter days, they're starting to open up, and soon this whole area from over here will be just covered in blooms. I find that these stay pretty low to the ground, under a foot tall, until the fall or late summer when they really start putting on height, and they'll be 2.5, almost 3 feet tall and just loaded with blooms here this fall. I cut back my phlox after they bloomed early summer, and they're reblooming as well. This is the time of year that sedum is also coming into bloom, and it is really lovely to use in arrangements at this stage. I love this sedum, and it does have pink blooms. I'll zoom in on it for you. I'll get over here so you can tell. The blooms are pink when they open up, but I love the texture, almost like little water drops that this sedum has before the blooms open. So I really like this in arrangements, especially at this stage. Of course, you can use sedum just for the leaves, but I really like the way that this texture adds interest with the bloom even before the blooms are open. My ball arborvitaes have been very consistent. They look exactly the same even though we've been in a hot spell. And I've been really proud of my oregano I started from seed this year. This is one plant and then another. There's a tag down there from an oregano from last year that didn't make it, but this is all new. One plant of growth, like I said, and then the other started from seed this spring. And it even is starting to bloom. These are some more yarrow that I've been continually cutting on and that are continuing to bloom for me. My black-eyed Susans or Rudbeckia have just finished blooming. They're kind of going out at this point. You can see a grasshopper, but also you can see that they're losing their petals, but I will go ahead and leave these little cones for winter for forage for the birds, and so that it can set more seed if it wants to. Even though I would not use these for arrangements at this point, they still have a lot of color on them and bring a lot of textural interest to my garden. Here is another daylily that's reblooming for me, this kind of pinky purple one. Looking really nice. I love that color combination with the black-eyed Susans that are yellow, the yellow center of the daylily with the yellow black-eyed Susans. And I also really love these kind of pinky purple daylilies with the sedum below. So this sedum is one that blooms pink, and I really like that the leaves of this one, you can see kind of back in here, are more of a bluey toned green. And with the pink blooms, you can tell that these sedum bloom a little bit earlier than my others as the blooms are already open, but the bees and pollinators love them, and I really love this kind of pink maroon color as we're heading into fall. It's a really nice bridge with some of the more fall tones that I use in arrangements. So this one is one that I really like to use stems of just in individual vases. And then I also really like it dried. It looks almost exactly the same dried as it does fresh. So if I accidentally break off a stem or something, I like to dry it and use it for wreaths and things like that. It holds up fairly well. One thing that I am just continually impressed with is this nepeta. It has been so amazing and full of pollinators. There's just been a crazy amount of butterfly and bee activity on it, and I'm just really, really happy with it. So if you don't have nepeta in your garden, I would really recommend it. I'll look up the name of this variety, but each plant they were supposed to get, I believe, about 18 inches, but they're closer to 2.5 feet probably. And if you'll remember from one of my other videos, I cut them back and they went ahead and rebloomed for me. If you can just imagine with me, look back here at my purple coneflowers and the kind of purple, pink, and peach tones that they have. And imagine this whole area filled in with coneflowers. I'm letting them self-seed in this area. As well as these 2 rose bushes should be about 3 feet tall and wide. So envision this kind of orangey, peachy, pink color in this whole area, starting with the rose bushes and then going back into the coneflowers in the back. In the front, of course, will be this purple nepeta, and I think it'll be quite a good show, but we're just not quite there yet. These rose bushes have taken some damage, and I moved them from our old property, so they're just kind of getting back into the groove and just getting settled. But if you'll imagine with me, instead of having kind of a blank space here, imagine this all filled with these rose bushes when they bulk up, and then more of these beautiful coneflowers in the back here. I'm really impressed with how my garden has grown this year, even in the heat and with our lack of rain, and that gives you a little bit of an update on what is looking nice this time of year in the dog days of summer as we head into fall. Thank you so much for growing along with me.